While Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker is underperforming, things aren't looking much more optimistic for another property with Star in its title either, namely Star Trek. On January 2nd, Bounding in the Comics reported that Noah Hawley's Star Trek 4 is now dead in the water, as the investors and financiers have pulled out, which should come as no surprise if you've seen our previous reporting on the matter. To make matters worse, Quentin Tarantino is reported to be rethinking if he really wants to make a Star Trek film after all. And from what we're hearing, the powers that be at ViacomCBS are very worried with how Picard is going to be received. In this video, we will add clarity to all of this as we explore the funding woes behind Star Trek 4, Tarantino's newfound doubt about making a Star Trek movie, and what we have learned about the behind-the-scenes worries over Picard. Before we begin though, if you like the content provided in this video, then leave a like and subscribe, and in the process, make sure to indicate that you want notifications on all videos. We'd also greatly appreciate if existing subscribers will take a moment to check that you are still subscribed, and that you too get notifications on all videos. On November 19th, Variety broke the scoop that Noah Hawley had been tapped to write and direct the next Star Trek movie. In our video covering this, which was published a week and a half later, we broke down how this strategic leak was more than anything else aimed at investors and financiers rather than the movie going public. Perhaps hoping to push investors towards making the right decision, The Hollywood Reporter also put out a strategically timed article which highlighted that despite earlier missteps, the fans were still there for Star Trek, and at the right cost, a Star Trek movie can still be a very financially lucrative venture. For Bad Robot, the production company behind Noah Hawley's Star Trek 4, securing the funding is of paramount importance. At this point in time, Paramount and CBS have been reunited under the newly merged parent company ViacomCBS, and the Star Trek rights were merged back together in the process. As such, Paramount has no further need for the alternate Star Trek license which spawned the Kelvin timeline. They can make real Star Trek now, and on top of that, their Star Trek production deal with Bad Robot has expired. Bad Robot can still pitch Star Trek movies to Paramount, of course, and if Paramount were to accept, their deal with Bad Robot would be back on. Alternate license and everything, where Bad Robot gets a huge cut of all merchandise. So you can see why Bad Robot won't leave the Star Trek business without one last try. From Paramount's point of view, however, the alternate license is no longer an attractive proposition. When it was created and the production deal with Bad Robot was initiated, it made sense because at the time, it was the only way Paramount had of getting any kind of Star Trek merchandise revenue, period, even if it had to be shared with Bad Robot. Now that Paramount again has ownership over Star Trek by way of parent company ViacomCBS, this is no longer an issue. Quite the contrary, it is now in Paramount's best interest to keep Bad Robot out of the equation, and the whole alternate license with it. The only thing that could change the cash-starved Paramount's mind is if Bad Robot were to present them with an offer that was too good to refuse. Something so good it would offset the negative of having to extend the alternate license and cut Bad Robot in on the merchandising action, assuming there would be any. What would be good enough for that? Bad Robot figured that a ready-to-go Star Trek 4 that could be made on a budget, which Bad Robot had already secured the bulk of the funding for, would do the trick. That is what the earlier strategic leaks were all about. Secure the necessary funding that would enable them to lock down key talent and pitch Paramount a Star Trek offering they could not refuse. They never got that far. What has held up production on a fourth Star Trek movie for the better part of 4 years now is a lack of funding, which is another way of saying the investors and financiers still have plenty of money, but they aren't willing to put any of it into another Star Trek, at least not the kind that Bad Robot wants to make. In their January 2nd article, Bounding in the Comics reported that Star Trek 4 was dead due to investors pulling out. This is in line with not only what we expected, but what we also heard from our own sources with ties to the production. As usual, the information we are about to relay cannot be independently verified. As such, you must take it with a pinch of salt and treat it as rumor. That warning out of the way, here is what we've heard about why Noah Hawley's Star Trek 4 won't happen, nor any Kelvin timeline movie. After the information about Noah Hawley's Star Trek 4 was strategically leaked, we've been told that investors monitored social media to gauge how much interest the public and potential audiences showed in the news and the prospect of a Noah Hawley-directed Star Trek 4. The answer was, as investors now wise to this tactic expected, very little. We've been told that some investors flat out told the Bad Robot representatives that they were trying to raise funding for a project the audience weren't interested in. There may be a market for Star Trek out there, it is reported as being said, but not the kind of Star Trek you are pitching. The problem for Bad Robot is that it's the only kind of Star Trek that is financially lucrative to them. But if they can't secure the necessary funding to win Paramount over, both Star Trek 4 and the alternate license with it is finished. But that is just one Star Trek project Bad Robot we're working on. There is another. The Star Trek project that has generated perhaps the most attention in the past couple of years is Quentin Tarantino's Star Trek movie. What was always worrisome with it, however, is that there was never a release date scheduled or even a time frame planned. Some early work was done breaking down the story, but that is about as far as things have ever gotten on Quentin Tarantino's Star Trek. And that may be as far as they'll go. On December 16th, Quentin Tarantino told Deadline Hollywood, "I might be steering away from it, but we'll see. I haven't completely decided or talked to anyone involved. Nothing is official." Such expressions of doubt in public are rarely a good sign. Simon Pegg tried countering the bad news making the rounds, saying, "As far as I know, Quentin Tarantino's Star Trek idea is still kind of in the mix," he said. "That's down to QT about what he wants to do next, you know. There's been talk of various spin-offs possibly. We'll see." This statement may make for positive headlines, but really what Simon Pegg did was confirm that Tarantino is having second thoughts, while talking up the idea of spin-off movies instead of the at least officially still in development Star Trek 4. Until Paramount decide on what they want to do, the future of Star Trek film is, at this point in time, uncertain. Things aren't much better on the TV or rather the streaming front either. Star Trek Picard is due for release on January 23rd on CBS All Access in the US and on Amazon Prime in most of the rest of the world.
Hello everyone. I am delighted to announce that Star Trek fans around the world, except in the United States and Canada, will soon be able to enjoy the next thrilling chapter of Picard's life on Amazon Prime Video. Enjoy.
Normally, this is where we would have referred to it as the highly anticipated Star Trek Picard. However, if the rumors we are hearing are anything to go by, CBS's internal tracking figure suggests that there is not. There is, of course, interest in the series as expressed by social media demand impressions, but reportedly far fewer than CBS would have liked. This has CBS worried, as a lot of money has been put into Picard, and outside of Amazon and other minor international distributors like Space, there aren't many other parties helping to mitigate the risk. Even the major licensees passed on it, so there won't be any major merchandise income to speak of either. Like Discovery before it, the licensees decided they could not sell the designs used in Picard to the hardcore adult collectors of Star Trek merchandise. We are also hearing there is a connection between Picard and Season 3 of Star Trek Discovery, as Picard will set up the dire state of the galaxy and collapsing Federation will find itself in Discovery's future timeline. This reportedly is a connection and storyline we are also hearing that Sherry Redstone and her newly assigned heads of ViacomCBS are none too pleased with. A Season 2 of Star Trek Picard has been announced, but assuming it gets the green light, how Season 1 is received will decide if it gets made with the story currently planned, or if even more reconfiguration will be done between now and the start of production. For now, let us know how excited you are for the imminent Season 1 of Picard and your thoughts on Noah Hawley's Star Trek 4 being dead in the water in the comments.